Hello and welcome, everybody. I'm joined by Mr. RMC, aka RandomMinionCaster, somebody that is a higher celebrity, higher clout. You might have seen this guy on Kadrill's channel recently, maybe if you tuned in to the America's Challengers tournament, or if you guys are a Last Free Nation fan, you would have seen him actually on the Summoning Insight when they did a bit of the MSI preview and stuff like that, right? Like since the last time we've spoke, which was around the America's merger, RMC, you've been making the rounds on all the high profile League of Legends podcast channels, everything. And like, just can you talk to me about that? Like, how's that been? Like the slow rise and like, hey, we need a CBLOL guy. You're the dude. You're the CBLOL guy now, by the way.
What can I say, Shibby? It must be your influence, right? You bring me on, and next thing I know, I'm climbing up, you know?
That's how it works. No. That's how it works.
I can't claim full credit for it. I mean, a rising tide raises all ships, and I think it's honestly a lot of it is more just Brazil has been stepping up significantly. I mean, since the last time we spoke, Shibby, the America's mergers coming in. We've had now 2 international events where Brazil has done well. One being the America's Challengers, which was, of course, the Tier 2 all across America's event. Brazil won that, and I think that really helps sort of raise interest around the region. And now at World, Shibby, play-ins is done, and guess who made it up for the first time ever, baby?
I know. That's crazy, by the way. This is the first, and the fact that it's PainGaming of all teams. For anybody that doesn't know, RMC is a PainGaming fan. Like, he's just, from as long as I've known him, he's been a PainGaming guy, and he has seen his team lose to Loud in more ways than I can count. Like it's yeah. See, there you go. That's exactly. So like the fact that it's that team as well probably makes it even more vindicating in that aspect. And I kind of want to take us through, because usually we would do like a region rundown or something like that prior to play-ins, but the fact that PainGaming has now made it into the Swiss stage, they may have made it out of play-ins for the first time. I think that's a reason for us to talk about it, because I think for a lot of people, they don't actually watch play-ins. Like, a lot of people will watch main Worlds events. They will watch Worlds mains. And
y'all are missing out.
yeah. And they'll be like, okay, well, where's NA third seed? Where is like the typical, where are the teams I'm used to? Why is PainGaming here? Oh, there's GAM. I know GAM time, all that stuff. But I do want to try to like talk about kind of the games. Obviously, you've watched all of them. I'm sure you've seen all of them. This PainGaming roster and this CBLOL roster that came in, arguably, obviously, the most successful. I want to ask you from the get-go to kind of set the stage, what has made them different from like the Louds that we've seen come in? Like, why was it PainGaming of all rosters to make it out of Swiss, or make it out of play-ins, let's say? Because this roster, granted, very good, has a lot of household names, Teton, Weiser, Tinkato, like the Karaoke, like these kind of guys, right? Like, I've known them. If you paid attention to the international stage, you'll recognize a couple of these names. But why was it this team and not the multiple iterations of Loud that we've seen prior?
Because they don't choke, Shibby. Genuinely. Like, that is why Pain is the one making it out for so long. Because Brazil's been hyped up the last couple of years. I think in the last couple of years, most people have realized that, hey, Brazil actually has the talent. Like, the mechanics are there. Starting with, 2022 Worlds when Brunsey went and Mr. Botgap showed up, Bodied Fnatic, and it was like suddenly the whole world's like, wait, hold up. Brazil might actually be decent. It is. But the problem is, Loud is the best team Brazil has ever produced. Specifically the roster with Root and Seos, both of whom, Root's still around, Seos switched to a different team. They might be the best team Brazil has ever produced, but it is not the best team Brazil sends. Because every time they go to Worlds, every time they go to MSI, Loud chokes. Robo, Tinons, Croc, they take turns kind of choking and throwing, and just generally, as far as puts it, puking all over themselves. They are amazing domestically, but they can't perform on the international stage. Whereas Pain's a different team. Like, when it comes to suffering, like this team lives up to its brand. No joke. Pain has struggled for years now. The last time they won was 2021 Split 1. They went to MSI 2021. Had a decent showing. And then from there, they have never finished lower than top 4. They made grand finals like 5 times in a row, 6 times in a row now. And then finally actually made it to Worlds. So they are incredibly consistent. They don't crack under pressure. They have been pressure cooked. They've been boiled. They've been... like, they are diamonds now after all the pressure they've been through. And so when it comes to clutch, they show up in ways that Loud never did.
And I think it's appropriate to kind of start, at the beginning for of play-ins where they played off against arguably, or a lot of people thought was the strongest play-ins team, right? And they didn't really show up until much later, but their series against PSG Talon very easily could have been a 2-0 for PainGaming, right? And we can talk about all the matches. Obviously, game one, they come in with the interesting plan. Like, I think the play-ins meta has been very, very interesting as well, specifically because, Ozzy got his Rumble. We saw Skarner come in. That was opened up. Like, Maple defaulted to the Tristana, which has not been nerfed, by the way. Is still very, I believe, still pretty solid in the mid lane if you want to play it. But if you look at PainGaming, they kind of came with a different thing. The Sejuani plus double melee. I think this is going to be something that's going to come straight into the world's main stage as well. Like, Sejuani is a champion plus double melee solos. They come in with Lucian Nami, like a very strong bottom lane for Titan and Kuri. Like, was this the PainGaming that you guys were expecting, RMC, or is this something they'd shown in CBLOL during their grand finals or during grand finals in their playoffs run? Like, was this a PainGaming comp that you expected, or was this something that was thrown out of left field?
Okay, stylistically, it's what we expected. In terms of the exact picks, there were a couple of surprises. Actually, if you watch CBLOL, Dinkido's Yone, he played it once and never again because it was such a joke. People were making fun of and memes of it. It was pretty bad, actually. It got to the point where the week after he played it, sorry, no, he did play it twice, pardon me. The week after he played it the first time, did he play it once or twice? Once, sorry. Yeah, it was just once in the regular season. And then the week they lost both games that week. And the next week, Pain fans came to the stadium with signs telling Pain what to ban and what not to play. And Yone was one of those champions like, please don't play this again.
Brutal. That's brutal. That sounds like CBLOL though. That sounds like
yeah, it is. And Pain, especially Pain fans, are like, Pain likes to interact with their fans a lot, right? That's why they have the biggest fan base. And so it's kind of typical of their interactions. And so Dinkido never touched the Yone again. But it is very meta. So seeing Dinkido play it, not gonna lie, when he locked it in, I was half crapping myself. And the laning phase went exactly as we expected. He got dumpstered on. But later on, he managed to play well. Once he got out of the laning phase, so that's fine. The Lucian Nami is also a surprise. While Titan is known to be a Lucian player, it's kind of like his Ezreal. He plays very, very aggressively. He likes to dash in and whatnot. And he dominates in with it. First of all, it's not terribly meta in the bot lane right now. We've been seeing it more frequently in the mid lane. And second of all, it means that Curry was on Nami. And Curry is known as like an incredible engaged guy in Brazil. Like one of the best, actually, after winning it all. So watching him go on the Nami did feel a little bit like we weren't putting Curry on his best foot. But it put Titan on his best foot. And so that kind of worked out as far as bot lane duos go in. So the playstyle fits Pain. The champions did surprise me a little bit when we saw it come through. But that's fine, right? It was just more what we hadn't seen because of meta, I guess.
Yeah, and I like how you kind of talk about that Ezreal pick because we go on to game two and we kind of see a little bit more traditional stuff, like Weiser on the Rumble. Obviously, Dinkido locked in the Yone, was feeling himself, was like, hey, I won game one. I've got this. Titan and Kuri run like the Ezreal Braum, which I feel is like a very kind of passive lane. It's like, hey, you're not going to kill us. We're not really going to kill you, but we're going to get to a point where Titan can kind of prance around in these team fights, land the mystic shots, and really just put on the damage. Maple came in with a pretty good counter pick on the Akali. I'll say counter pick. I really think the Akali did very well into Dinkido, specifically because of how well Maple looked in laning phase. Him being able to kind of snowball the laning phase dominance into being a team fight menace, like was this the more typical, like, oh, PainGaming, also Karaoke just not having a good game, right? Like straight up just not having a good time on Vi.
Yeah, I swear this team just has an issue with Karaoke on Vi. His Vi itself isn't the problem. It's the way the rest of the team plays around it. His Vi goes in and it always goes in alone. Like the rest of Pain's just like, have fun, Karaoke. We go on your vacation. We'll join you after. It's like, bro, that's not how Vi works. The whole team needs to go in with him. So yeah, I mean, this was more what I expected when I see the Vi and Yone being locked in for Karaoke and Dinkido. I will say though, I think Titan and Curry, even though Ezreal Braum might be considered more of a passive bot lane, the way Titan plays Ezreal, it's aggressive, and they were dominating that bot side against Betty and Woody. Betty and Woody did not have a good showing in the bot lane against Titan Curry. Once they got off lane, that was different, but like the 2v2 Like Titan and Curry just ran it over and over and over again. I think the biggest problem was in the mid lane, and huge props to PSG. They Maple very quickly, I think, realized that he was going to crush the laning phase. So that's why like, he just picks the Akali, right? Who traditionally has a weak pre-6. But against Dinkido, it didn't matter. It just ran Dinkido and just killed and snowballed incredibly fast. And it happened in game 2, game 3 as well, right? PSG just recognized that, hey, Dinkido is bullyable early. We can punish, we can snowball.
Yeah. Were you surprised with the Ashe pick coming out from Titan? Because I don't know. No. I don't view, like when I look at Titan as a player, right? Like I never pegged him as like the Ashe guy, right? Like,
yeah.
But was that just something that like, hey, it's in meta, it's strong, like we can force and engage, like we have Syndra Ashe Lee Sin, like see hero, kill hero, like if we find somebody out of laning phase. Also Ozzy picking up the Vayne, I like he looks good now, but like at the time, like the Vayne into
no, bro, no,
like the Vayne pick. When I saw it locked in, I was like, he's picking that into Ashe, Syndra, Lee Sin. Like, how is he even going to function in this game? But
and on top of that too, I think Molecule PCS expert was saying that Ozzy on range champions is just like he's not good at them. So when I saw that locked in where it was locked, I'm like, okay, PSG's giving us a chance. Yeah. So about Titan and Ashe. So Shibby, you used to cover CBLOL as well. When we remember Titan, we think of Rid candidates Titan, where he had like hard carry and his team would not peel for him no matter what. So if he has no mobility, if he has no playmaking or safety potential, he's on his own. He's dead. But here on Pain, it's actually the perfect environment for Titan. Like, we think of Titan as mechanical, but sometimes brain dead because he gets caught out. And we used to joke that game goes long enough, Titan's going to do something stupid. But players and coaches have been for years saying that Titan's one of the most cerebral, brilliant guys in the region. Like he's really, really smart. We don't see it play-wise till this year. On Pain is a team that will play around their AD carry. Back when it was, Damage, back when it was B-Voy, back when it was BRTT, right? No matter what, they will play around their bot lane. So Titan actually has a team peel for him now. He gets to play non-mechanical champions without escapes like Ashe. And this year, actually, he had a 100% win rate on Ashe walking into Worlds. So seeing the Ashe picked up here, that was just like, okay, yeah, we're going to slam that B1, B2 because he's that good on Ashe. He can play make on Ashe. Problem was, I think, for the first time in a while, Pain didn't really play around their AD carry. You picked like a Lee Sin, Syndra, and Nar. Like, who's peeling for this Ashe? Like, maybe Curry on Alistar, but Curry was their primary engage half the time because Karaoke and Weiser couldn't quite sync up properly. So there's just no peel for Titan, and he kind of got wiped out. A little bit sad. It's his first Ashe loss this year. But yeah, it didn't really surprise me. I do think we might not see it as much moving forward in Worlds, or it's going to be more situational. I think the team needs to build around it a little bit better if he wants to do that.
And so coming away from that 2-1 loss, right? I feel like despite the series loss, a lot of people were like, oh, it was one of two things. Is PainGaming actually good or did PSG underperform? And I actually, now that we're at the kind of end of it now with the play-in stage, both were true. Like both were a bit true. So like when you saw that series as like the CBLOL guy, were you, what side were you on? Were you like, oh, actually PainGaming, there's like a real possibility that this team is like actually like can do damage in play-ins? Or was it more like, this is not the PSG that I saw. This is not the PSG that Molecule was talking about. Like this is a different PSG time. This is not the same PSG that beat FlyQuest essentially, right?
Yes, I think I was leaning more to that side. Like Pain performed about actually where I expected. I know a lot of people are, oh, well, obviously you're CBLOL bias, but no, genuinely, if you go watch tape on how Pain plays, like they've been like this for literal years now, even when they keep changing out their bot lane. So Pain was about where I expected. Maybe Weiser popped off a little bit harder than I thought he would in game 1. But Titan Curry, this is what we expected from them. I think PSG Talon, bro, PSG was Pain's biggest supporter this play-in. Like when they played against Pain, they did not play up to huge potential. When they played up against GAM, they didn't play up to their full potential either. I think GAM, don't get me wrong, GAM was number 1. Like they were the best team in the play-ins, but not playoffs. But at the same time, I also don't think PSG performed up to their potential against GAM. And then up against 100 Thieves. That was when we saw the PSG that everybody was talking about. That's the PSG where everybody was like, okay, they're supposed to be the best play-ins team.
Yeah, that was the PSG where it's like, oh yeah, they beat FlyQuest, by the way. Like that's the same PSG. Yeah. Okay, so we move on from PSG Pain, and then we get into the Viking Esports or VK versus PainGaming. And VK is no slouch, right? They've got players like Kadi, Shogun, who, you know, if you talk to the VCS people, they'd be like, yeah, this is their team. This is what they can do.
Yep.
Guri is like kind of like a oddball jungler a little bit. Like he can kind of do some stuff here and there. They're like messing around. Where did you think PainGaming prior to the series would be able to get a lot of their advantages? Do you think it was in bot lane matching Shogun? Dinkato, was he going to be like a massive star against someone like Kadi? Like the way the games played out versus the expectation for how to Pain win, I think were a lot different coming into the series.
I didn't expect Dinkato to do as well as he did, actually, into Kadi.
I don't think most people did.
No, I mean, you could argue that Kadi was still actually walking away with lane leads most games. Like even on the Smolder, he was still kind of going even against Tristana, which is all you can really want and hope for. But yeah, I think Dinkato overperformed a little bit. Like this was the Dinkato that we saw a little bit in the playoffs, and because of that, we started seeing bans thrown against him by R7, which I didn't think was necessary. But the one who I really thought stepped up in that matchup was Weiser.
In the top on the Rumble.
On the Rumble, on the Jax as well. Like I think you just need to not give Weiser Jax. Like bro's been playing against Robo for so long. Like he knows how this Jax operates, and you just can't give it to him. And I actually think a lot of that was their coaching staff success as well. Really understanding how the game needed to be played, because Vikings bot lane is strong. Shogun and Bie, props to Tyne Curry because they actually won that matchup. But it was still more even, I think, than a lot of bot lanes in the play-ins against Tyne Curry. How I would have expected to go. I think Shogun Bia did a decent job against that. But I think the coaching staff correctly identified that Nanoe, Vikings top laner, this guy is new. He's a full-on rookie. And so they gave him the CBLOL welcome, which is, hey, there's a new player in. We capped that lane. And Weiser just absolutely destroyed him and became, I think, the big pivot point. And that's not generally how Pain play. Pain actually don't play through the top lane very much. A lot of times like, hey, Weiser, pick your matchup, you know, whether we're weak side you or whether you get counter matchup, just have fun up there. Karok will give you 2 ganks and then you're on your own for the rest of the fight, for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
They didn't do that this time. They actually played around Weiser, gave him proper resources, and then brought Weiser to the fight pretty consistently. And he was the focus, not Titan, not Dinkato, not Karaoke. It was the Weiser show.
Yeah, I think that also has like partially due to their strategic code, right? Zero, who has been within CBLOL for quite some time now, I would say. But like, I think they just recognize that, like, hey, yeah, there's some weakness there. Weiser can definitely push the envelope a little bit. I was very surprised with Dinkato. I was also pleasantly surprised with Kuri picking up the Nico support, just like locking that in.
Ah, yes.
Was that something that he had shown in CBLOL prior? But I know he's a big engaged guy. I know he's an engaged support guy. Like you said, he looked very good. But was like the Nico, was that always a possibility? Like, I'm going to throw this in the back pocket, especially pairing it up with like, well, probably one of its best pairings now, Callisto, who you can just kind of like throw in, you're dead.
Yeah. So Curry showed this back in spring, in split 1. So anybody who's playing CBLOL, like when we saw the Nico locked in, we're like, that's not Dinkato's Nico. That's 100% Curry's Nico. That's going to be coming through. We didn't see it too much this split. We saw a couple bans thrown at it throughout the split sporadically whenever people thought that Curry might whip it out. But it's always been very good into the traditional engaged champions. And then the whole Kalista thing, I give credit to Smalley for that on Vivo Cage Stars in Brazil. He was the one who kind of made Misfortune like a huge pick there. And Kalista was his sort of prepared counter pick for the Misfortune. And he whipped it out a couple of times. So I think for Pain, we've seen this before. You want the Misfortune, that's fine. We'll take the Kalista Nico that we are very, very good at, that we've seen work before, and we know exactly how to play around it. Props to Vikings for actually lane swapping out of that absolutely brutal combo. If they had played into it, Shogun and Bey would not have had a mid game. So props to them for actually getting out the roughest part of the game. Still weren't quite able to play it, but I think that's more in Pain just playing better that game and Weiser just becoming a beast.
Yeah, and a quick aside, does CBLOL understand lane swaps like to the degree that you expected, or do they like what is their general? Well, were they doing it in playoffs? Because like a lot of people, like I said, that are going to watch the main stage, they don't know if CBLOL was lane swapping, right? They don't know what was happening. Does PainGaming? I mean, if not now, before did they know like what to do in response, how to match waves, or when to TP in? Because I think the lane swaps can get really, really tricky. The new age lane swaps are a lot different than the ones that like me and you have seen from days past, right? They're not meant to gather and garner a ton of gold. Generally, these lane swaps are there to like miss out on really bad matchups, take an early deficit, and just recoup that gold later on through better map movement.
Yeah, and it's no longer just the 3-0 handshake where both teams try and push opposite sides.
Yeah.
Right? We saw Weiser go mid lane when he was homeless, right, to try and shut down Kati as much as possible, right? Whereas you saw Nanawa, they kind of jungling with Guri to speed up the jungle. So yeah, there's a lot more permutations. Does CBLOL play lane swaps? No, they don't. We've tried VKS, Loud have tried it. I'm going to be honest, I think Pain did it once as well. It's ugly. I don't think CBLOL knows how to lane swap effectively, but in terms of dealing with lane swaps, I think Brazil's okay with that. Like they have some idea of how things ought to play out, and I do think they foresaw the potential for lane swaps to come through, and so they had good responses prepared. I would be surprised if we see Pain going forward actually go for any real lane swaps and not just early rotations. I'd be very surprised if we saw that. But I don't think lane swaps is a way that you can really try and catch PainGaming off guard.
That's fair. Okay. So we move on from this, right? The 2-0, kind of solo laners stepping up, Weiser and Tinkato, kind of just like, I'm not going to say put the team on their back, but they definitely like performed above, I think, most people's expectations, I will say, right? Like that wasn't the way that I think Pain was supposed to win. And now we get into probably the final series, the determining series, right?
Yes.
R7 versus PainGaming, LLA versus CBLOL, a preview of the America's merger match. I mean, I feel like you couldn't have written the script better because North America, or in this case, LCS drops out of play-ins. They don't make it. Now it's like everyone's like, well, it's all Americas now, so let's support these guys, right? Like I see some of the LCS
100 Thieves didn't technically get knocked out till after this match.
That's true. That's true. That is true. 100 Thieves didn't get knocked out till after the match, but I mean, it's just like the script, right? The script is a lot better now. Could you talk to me about this series? Because I kind of feel like PainGaming came into it, at least game one, a little disrespectful. Like they were expecting to beat R7, and I think R7 very, very well. They, like you said, you mentioned before, they punched very high or punched above their weight. Can you talk to me about like what that game one plan was? Because I feel like this series was a heart attack for both sides.
Oh, 100%. And before I break into it, I want to give props to Movistar 7 and LLA as a whole. Like this year, I think they really popped off. And this Worlds, and especially like R7, a lot of times we look down at LLA as like, oh, they're the weakest region. I think R7 did a lot to change that sort of mindset, the way they played this tournament. I do think they performed better than expected, better than they should have. But you can't take this away from them. And this game, this series especially, in a nutshell, felt like the way R7 was playing. Going into the game one, I will say I don't think it was disrespectful necessarily. The comp is fine. I think they drafted to their strengths. This is a very typical comp. Nightmare described it as like a 2022 composition. And I agree. It is very old comfort, not super terribly meta. Where I think everything kind of fell apart was Dinkedo and Ari. Dinkedo can play a lot of different champions. A lot of international fans probably aren't familiar with him because he's always lived in the shadow of Tinones. But he's good, and he can play pretty much anything and everything. The problem is, internationally, I don't think his laning phase holds up. And you can't be picking things like Ari if you can't handle the laning phase. Because you pick Ari a lot of times for her early strength. Yes, you can do other things with her outside of laning. Go talk to Amira about that. He gave an entire sermon about it during the game. But yeah, you do need to win your laning phase. That is the whole point of picking Ari. And he just struggled.
And were you kind of like surprised that they didn't? Instead, they locked in the Maokai, right? The Vi. I mean, see, the Poppy counter pick kind of just negates a lot of what Dinkedo Karaoke want to do, right? Like it's just fundamentally, Weiser can't get into these fights as well because he can't use his leap strike. Dinkedo can't get into these fights. He's also playing against Syndra, who is like just got a massive, like nice chunk of change of buffs that has kind of pushed her a little bit over the edge. I mean, was when you saw this, you were like, oh, this is either going to go really, really well for Pain, or they're just going to get absolutely curb stomped into the ground. And I feel like Keen really stepped up here, obviously, like throughout the whole series, and it kind of highlighted the way that PainGaming could lose and can lose in the play-in stage, right? Or sorry, the group stage.
The Swiss
stage,
like,
it's gonna be a Dinkedo gap. Like half the time, Dinkedo is just gonna like not be able to stand up against some of these mid laners. I hate to see a world where Dinkedo has to go up against like Chovy, and it's like, well, what do you do, right? Like, what do you do? What do you do against Showmaker? What do you like? Even if we talk about some of the lower play-in teams, right? Zhao Hu would have a field day against Dinkedo. So can you talk to me more about like this game one and like Was it surprising? Was it the expected result, or was it a little bit more like, wow, LLA is actually like might do this?
Well, okay, Wiser Jax is a great pick, right? Like we talked about that.
Fundamentally,
blind pickable.
yes.
Yeah. Karioka's Maokai, I think, had something like 90% win rate or something like that throughout the entire year. It was getting banned against him by every Brazilian team. So the Maokai pick's fine. Even into the Poppy, it's perfectly usable. The Lucian Nami in the bot lane for Titan Curry, I think that is now their sort of go-to bot lane, where like if we have to blind it, we're just going to slam this duo because we are just that good at it. Even the Ari for Dinkedo is something he has played fairly regularly throughout the year. So the draft itself is fine. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Kenny and Dinkedo and the fact that Dinkedo's laning just can't hold up. I don't want to see Dinkedo on these lane dominant champions anymore. Pick the Syndra yourself, right? We saw the Akali being permabanned against him. We saw the Yone being permabanned. He's still got things like Azir. He could still pick Smolder if he wants, right? Tristana as well. Yes, we picked Tristana a lot of times for her laning phase and her pushing priority in mid lane. But her skillings are good too, right? So I think for Dinkedo, you just need to kind of pick champions at scale instead of trying to pick champions that have early game strength. The way they were disrespectful, I think, was the way that Karioka was trying to force a lot of ganks through the mid lane. And it comes off as disrespectful when Dinkedo was already losing the lane. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think it was disrespectful. I think that was panic. Like the idea here was that we've got the Ahri. We're trying to play the jungle mid duo. We want the Maokai to gank the Ahri and get the Ahri into the side lanes. When it didn't work the first time, instead of going like, okay, let's be more careful, like Dinkedo can't handle this, I think they just doubled down and went like, no, this can't be true. We just need to gank harder.
They ran it back. They literally ran 4/5 of the same composition back. Karioka, instead of blocking the Maokai, went in with the Sejuani, who I think Sejuani just like fundamentally is probably like a little better of a champion right now.
Engage.
Yeah, especially with like pairing it up with Wiser and being able to kind of maybe punish Summit here and there a little bit. Which, I mean, the Wiser Summit matchup, I was expecting to be a little bit different, but they ran the Jax Cassante. They ran that back twice, and then game 3, Wiser went Cassante, and then we saw the Renekton from Summit. But like,
yeah, they banned the Jax to make sure.
Yeah. So they're liable to run that back again if the Jax wasn't banned.
100%. If it's open, Wiser will just slam it, right? Like there's not a lot of good ways to shut it down right now. So I think Kaney just stepped up absolutely massively for R7, and that made all the difference. And then sort of going into game 2 from there. I think the big change between game 1 and game 2 was more that we figured out that, hey, Karioka, Dinkedo, we can't be playing through jungle mid alone. Dinkedo is just not handling it. And banning out the Syndra and forcing the Hui, I think, was much better as well. Yes, they changed Syndra so she's not the lane dominant champion she used to be, where at level 6, she just is going to kill one person even if you gank her. They changed that, but Syndra still has ways to bully out the lane that Hui doesn't have early on. So I think that ban was very, very effective. And we actually saw Pain also not try and brute force jungle mid. We saw Curry roaming into mid with Karioka. So it wasn't just 2v1 anymore. It was 3v1 on a couple of those ganks, which I think helped a lot. And once Dinkedo got snowballing a little bit better, it was a lot easier for him. So, like I said, I don't think Pain was playing disrespectfully. I think they panicked game 1 and it came across as a little bit disrespectful. And yeah, again, props to R7. R7 was making this really, really tight. Game 1, game 2, I thought was good macro play. It showed the strength of the teams. Game 3, I think both teams...
Game 3 is what I like to call situational League of Legends, right? You don't really you don't prepare for what has happened in that game. I mean, at least from like minute 1 to 20, it was like, all right, like the game is going how we see it. We expect it. All right. Dinkedo is doing stuff on the Ahri. They swapped out Karioka onto another jungler, Wukong, which I think was actually a pretty good pick, specifically into things like the Renekton, things like the Sejuani,
and the
LeBlanc as well. Like the moment they go in, you can press R. You have a lot of damage, and you have the ability to knock up twice because of the way Wukong functions. Like I thought it was a very good pick, but the fact that the game went this late and the Kalista team ended up winning this instead of the on-hit Varus team, like that was. Would you say it was more of a choke job from R7, or was PainGaming just the better situational team? Like they've been in these scenarios before, so they knew how to handle it. Like what would you say that is? Because after like minute 25, like this game just like was like, what the fuck? What am I looking at? Like what is that? What actually is happening?
Absolute cinema, Shibby. That's what's happening. The South American special. And you know what? That's the thing about this game too, is that analysts looking at this game, coaches looking at this game are going to be clutching their heads, screaming like, "Oh, this is so bad." But this is why sports and esports is so entertaining to watch because these moments are the most human moments, the most human games, where the players there aren't executing the perfect game anymore. Like they're under pressure, they're under stress, and like okay, just look at what trinkets they were running. Both teams were running 4 sweepers and 1 blue trinket, and I think it was around 20 minutes when they all swapped to that. Like both teams just went, we're doing this. Now, what that tells you about their psychology is that their mental is that they're not looking to play like measured League of Legends anymore. They were just clearing out vision and looking for the advantage. And that kind of tells you the mindset they had at that point. It was very stressful and they were looking to turn off all the lights. Now imagine playing League of Legends with no vision. Think back to your gold, silver days. That's what they were doing. And so it was mentally incredibly straining for them in this situation. And I think both teams performed incredibly well. Considering the draft advantage, I think, lay with Pain, I thought R7 did a great job. Summit was an absolute beast on the Renekton. He was, I think, a huge reason why they got as late as they did. And Kaney on the LeBlanc still found angles despite Karaoke being on like LeBlanc watch duty, trying to cyclone every single time he walked in. Curry was trying to stop him every time he walked in. Seo is, to me, one of the most underrated players this game. Like, you barely heard his name being mentioned by the casters during the game. Because as a Varus, like, he didn't do anything special. But he was quietly pumping out the damage, despite the fact that the moment Kane had no more distort, there was no threat from the LeBlanc. Karaoke, Curry, and Dinkedo instantly drew a beat on Seo's head and went hit hunting. And he actually managed to position well enough to survive. But when it came down, like, as the game goes on, you can see, I think, the difference in regions. LA is not that domestically, internally competitive, generally speaking. I think this split may be a little bit different. They did have a lot of internal competition. But Brazil is always internally competitive. And for Pain, like you said, you know, they're used to the pressure. So when it came down to clutch situations, they know how to hold out. They've done worse. They've done longer games. And to me, too, like the Worlds video, you know how they showed red cannons instead of like Pain? Yeah. You ask any Brazilian person, they're like, there was no shot Red was going to win it. But here's the secret. Riot knew the script. And this was a red cannons game. This was Titan and Curry in their comfort zone. And you saw them popping off. Like on Red, every game's a clutch game. Last year, when Titan was on Red, they had two games where they had an open Nexus. Like no Nexus turrets left all the way in. They were incredibly like far down and they came back to win it. I think there was another game where they had like only one Nexus turret left. And Titan, well, Curry wasn't on that roster, but Titan was on that roster and he came back multiple times last year. Probably in this game, 45 minutes, he's like, oh, comfort zone. Like, yeah, we got this, guys.
He's built for war, built for war. And off of that, obviously, they beat R7. They qualify for the main stage. And I want to ask you, just as like a holistic thing, 2 questions. First one will be a lot easier. The second one will be a lot more controversial. But out of the play-in teams that have made it, obviously, like Pain being the most surprising, like, how likely do you think these 4 teams was the result? Right, like out of like all the different permutations that we could have gotten, obviously the least likely would have been like R7, Pain, SoftBank, and like VKE, obviously the worst teams. But like after kind of seeing the teams, after kind of seeing them play at day one and stuff like that, like was this like, okay, Pain has a legitimate shot at like running through arguably one of the easiest brackets they've gotten again, I would say.
Okay, so I'll start with the second half of the question. Pain did end up getting the easiest bracket possible, same as Vikings and R7, but it didn't start that way, right? It took the 100 Thieves loss against R7, which I don't think anybody predicted that. I know a lot of people say that 100 Thieves might not make it out, but not this way. Nobody expected them to drop to R7 first.
Nobody, round 1, R7 lost. Nobody expected that.
Yeah, and that was what created this super easy bracket from Pain. So in a way, it was a bit of a miracle situation that opened it up. Now, how surprised am I that Pain made it up? I'm going to be honest a little bit. I can't remember it was when I was talking to you, Shibby, or when I was talking to on a different podcast or something. I think I said that Pain, I think, had a 40% chance of getting out when I saw the bracket. So a bit of a surprise coming through. Mostly the big surprise was just because, I mean, Mad Lions, 100 Thieves, PSG, GAM all look really good coming in. But I remember, Shibby, you told me that you don't think the gap's that big. It's been closing between all these teams. And the best team coming out of play-ins is probably not that far from the worst team. And I agree with you. And I think that's exactly what we saw. So I'm actually not super surprised that Pain made it out. If anything, I'm just more surprised at the way the bracket kind of turned out. The 100 Thieves kind of getting wiped. The way they did was what really shocked me more than anything else. So, yeah, I think generally speaking, I'm happy with the thing. I'm not super shocked. Like, I'm not like crapping over myself. I think R7 punched up incredibly well. I think Pain delivered the CBLOL experience that I don't think Brazilian fans are that surprised by their performance. And I think it's good because I think the international fans have never seen a true Brazilian, or not never, but haven't been seeing a true Brazilian champion in Loud because they've been playing under. Vikings and SoftBank Hawks, I will touch a bit on them because I think Hawks grossly underperformed. I don't know what happened with them necessarily, but they were better than this in their domestic region. They choked. Vikings, I think, didn't necessarily get a fair shake because of the bracket that they had to deal with. They went up against Mad Lions, which did really, really well. And heck, you saw the way Mad Lions beat PSG as well, right? And granted, PSG was a bit sleepy that game still, but Mad Lions are really, really good. And then Vikings had to go up against Pain after that. And yeah, I think it's just a bad matchup for Vikings a little bit because their strength of the bot lane gets shut down and their top side gets exposed by Weiser, who's on a tear right now. And Kati did well against Enkido.
Kati did Kati things. That's the thing. That's
exactly.
The thing.
Yeah. So overall, more than anything else, I think the biggest surprise for me was just the way 100 Thieves bombed out, more than the fact that Pain or R7, because either of them really could have made it out on that last game.
Yeah, and now the second a bit controversial question, and I apologize if you get any hate DMs for this, but Peter actually ended up making a tweet about the team of the play-ins, and specifically listed Titan as the best AD carry out of play-ins. Now, I tend to agree with that. So, Mad Lion fans, send your hate towards me. Don't send it to RMC. He doesn't
come at me, bro. No, I'll take it. I think Titan was the best.
And could you elaborate a little bit more as to why you believe that? Peter obviously gave his reasons, I believe, both in Twitter, and I think he also talked about it on like a different show that he ended up appearing on. But he believes that Titan, it isn't believe, I think it's kind of factual. You can kind of look at it. Titan didn't get as much help as Supa did in a lot of these games. Titan was also playing like taking lanes and like hard stomping areas where they should have or where other teams should have had the advantage. Right. And like piloting the Lucian Nami, piloting the Kalista, piloting stuff like the flexibility of Titan. My opinion, he was he's not one of he was the best AD carry coming out of play-ins after everything's said and done. Do you tend to agree with that? Do you think there's a strong case for Supa? Like, could you make an arguable case for him, or is it kind of like clear cut and dry, Titan, then Supa, then like kind of everybody else?
I mean, first of all these they're always based on opinion, right? So that it's never easy cut and dried, right? So understandable. I remember the roster from Peter Dunn because like I fully agreed with it. Actually, I think Levi and Kiaya were absolutely cracked on the top side of the map.
Nuts.
Yeah, like they were a hard carrying GAM because the bot side, while it wasn't bad, wasn't quite performing up to standard. Mid lane being Maple. Okay, I also that one FPT the way he bodied Kiddo, understandable, right? Like Maple making number one. That was actually the one I probably would have contested the most because I think Maple kind of got lucky a little bit with the mid laners he had to face, but him being on that, that's the best mid laner for Peter. I respect that. For the bot side, you know what? Mad fans come after me, bro, because I think best support wasn't even Alvaro. I thought it was Curry with Titan.
Wow, you thought it was Curry and Quake. So we know the Teton Supa part, but now I want to hear why it's Curry, because I actually think Alvaro played very well this play-in.
100%. Alvaro, don't get me wrong. I think Alvaro being up there makes sense, right? He and Curry are top 1, 2. But the reason why I had Curry over Alvaro is the same reason I have Titan over Supa, which is that Mad Lions as a team is really good. They were the best team coming out of play-ins. Better than GAM, better than PSG. I mean, if PSG had played the way they did against 100 Thieves the entire play-ins, maybe that'd be in question. But as it stands right now, Mad was number 1, the best team coming out play-ins. But the problem is that as a team, they're too good. So the players who stand out don't stand out enough for me. Like Alvaro standing out amongst that roster, I think is probably why Peter Dunn had him as the number 1 support. And understandable. He had really good map rotations. His engages were absolutely on point. He was clutch as all hell, stopping some of those engages coming through. The reason why I have Curry and Titan above them is because I think Titan and Curry did the same things in a worse situation. Like with your jungler mid kind of choking a little, or not choking, but struggling. Because, I mean, it's not surprising.
You don't have Elioya as your jungler. I mean,
exactly.
It's a lot harder to play the game, I would argue.
Yeah, and because of that, I think Curry and Titan both stepped up. And a lot of the big turns, a lot of the really clutch moments, like for Mad Lions, they never had that game 3 R7 versus Pain moment, right? Like where everything's on the line, stress is just like any mistake would cost you the entire game. And we saw mistakes coming through. I saw Dinkato getting picked. We saw Wiser kind of off on the side, forced to recall in awkward moments. And Titan and Curry stepped up in those moments. They found the perfect engages. They kited the fights really, really well. When the chips are down like that, Titan and Curry delivered in a way that no other bot lane in all of play-ins did. And granted, you can say that, okay, the other teams didn't have an opportunity, and you're right. If you put Supa and Alvaro up against Titan and Curry, maybe they win that. But I didn't see that in this play-ins, and I'm sorry that they didn't have the opportunity. But I can only judge off what I saw, right? And for those reasons, I have Titan Curry above them because of just the opportunity they had, and they stepped up to that opportunity. So for Peter Dunn, what? If you want to say that Alvaro deserves to be the best AD carry over Titan, then I think you're taking away from Alvaro at that point. Because, yeah, I think Alvaro stepped up, and part of why Supa looks so good is because of Alvaro. And if you want to talk about, look at how they perform like in the regular season or in your domestic league and all that, sure, go for that. But we're judging strictly off play-ins, and in play-ins, Titan Curry just had more opportunities to shine.
Yeah, it was more of like, well, Mad Lions looked good together, kind of, as like a unit of 5. They weren't really allowed to do that, right?
Yeah, like tell your top lane, tell your mid laner to choke a little bit more, maybe, and then maybe Supa and Alvaro can look better.
Perfect. We got to the play-ins now. We're qualified for the main stage. Different beasts, different teams, lot of different teams. I'm going to say this. We could talk about their first match a little bit, but I kind of want to ask you a holistic question. There is a world where I believe PainGaming will face off against one of like GAM or PSG, something like that, right?
Yeah.
What is the likelihood of PainGaming going 2-3 in the Swiss stage?
Bro. Okay, I think the mindset.
Does it have to be really like do they have to get like some draw where it's like, okay, they face GAM and then they face PSG and then like that's the best they can, or maybe Mad. Maybe they face Mad.
The mindset for I think Pain and Brazilian fans going to this is we made it to Swiss. Like that was it. We won, guys. We made it to Swiss. Anything from here on out is bonus, basically. Is there a role we make 2-3? Yeah. 3-2? 2-3? Sorry, what's the question?
2-3.
Okay.
3-2 is
I was like, is there a role we make 3-2? I don't think so. Is there a role we make 2-3? Possible, but very unlikely, unfortunately. Going into this, realistically, we are the weakest team, bar none. Right? Like you have PSG, you have GAM, you have MAD all coming out, and I think all of them have shown that they are better teams right now, pound for pound. Like can we pull a lucky upset over them? Of course we can, but play 100 times, and we're definitely not favored coming out of that. So 2-3 is really, really hard. Now, funnily enough, if we were to go 2-3, I think it would come off a win off of G2.
I was going to ask, is G2 like one of the best teams you could have rolled in your round 1 matchup?
Yeah, it is the best, undeniably, yes.
And is that just because of like, the fact that G2 can sometimes play to the level of their team occasionally? Is that like, or do you perceive as G2 as like, okay, I mean, like, yeah, I guess that is probably the best role. Yeah, G2. Why is that? Where
variance?
In an ideal world, where does PainGaming get the advantage? It's not going to be Caps versus Dinkato. I highly doubt that. I have a feeling of where you're going to lend yourself to. Is it in that bot lane against Hansama and Mickey X?
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people are. Look, guys, Brazil is known for AD carries. For whatever odd reason, it just runs in Brazilian blood that the AD carries we produce are absolutely insane. I mean, we had Brunsey, Mr. Podcast, right? Like he popped up. BRTT better than double lift. Heck, B-Boy came to Brazil, and did for himself. And this guy is somebody who's popping off in NA and LCS. The bot lanes in Brazil are incredible. So if there was a place, I'm looking at Titan and Curry to kind of turn things. But there's also a sort of side dish serving of Wiser in the top lane. I think Wiser is playing some of the best League of Legends he ever has in his entire career, in his entire life. And I think Broken Blade, who's very, very good, can be somebody who, again, high rolls and low rolls. So there is a world in which Broken Blade messes up a little bit against Wiser and tilts, and we pick up games there. Is that likely? No, but I think that's possible. Whereas I don't think in any world Caps gets dumpstered by Dinkato. I'm sorry, Dinkus, I love you, but this is not.
Yeah,
just not doable.
Yeah, I feel like the mid 2v2 for G2 just like unfortunately just stomps PainGaming. Like I don't know what champions Dinkato and Karaoke can kind of default to, right? Like there's a world where like maybe G2 doesn't ban the Jax. Maybe Broken Blade thinks he has a pick prepared into it, whether it's like Vlad or some like random pick. Yeah, Riven or something like that, right? And it's like, okay, let's let the Jax through. Let me see if this guy's Jax can actually compete with me. And then there's a world where like Mickey X, who has had some like variance in his form, his at points in the year looked like one of the best supports. At points in the year just has inted his fucking face off in the season. There's a world where like, yeah, Titan and Curry can get like a bot lane advantage if they play something like Lucian Nami or the Kalista Nico, right? I don't think I'll say this. I don't think they win bot lane by playing like Ashe, Braum, or Ezreal, like that kind of stuff. I feel like if they default to that, Hansama and Mickey X are liable to kind of lock in something. Do you actually do you actually think the world is better for them if they lock in that kind of stuff rather than like the Lucian Nami / Kalista Nico and Kalista / whatever, Leona or whatever they want to play?
So I will say,
Rel.
Maybe it's a hot take. I think Titan and Curry in a 2v2 against Hansama and Mickey X, just straight 2v2 without the rest of the team, they would win even if they pick standard. Like you give them the Ezreal, they'll still win. In fact, actually, the Ezreal is a great pick for Titan, and I think he'd beat Hansama with the Ezreal. You pick something in Ashe in the straight 2v2, I think they win. I think the problem is the rest of the team coming in, and I don't imagine G2 would just leave Hansama and Mickey X alone in that 2v2 situation. There's going to be a lot of pressure. There's going to be roams. Caps is going to show up down there. Yikes is going to show up down there. Heck, Broken Blade's going to TP in to the bot side. So because of that, it won't be the isolated 2v2, but I think Titan Curry would actually win that 2v2. Regardless of we might see a 2v2 kill from them. Like I'm not even they're liable. They're liable to like solo kill. I expect to see like a lot of volatility in that bot line. But and to be fair, guys, I don't want to say that as if like, I think FlyQuest is that much better than G2. That G2 is the weakest of the tier 1 seeds. It's more just that G2 is highest variance. So G2 could absolutely slap Pain around. Like they might have adoption papers ready to be signed by Pain, But I do think that there's a higher chance of them following up than there is of FlyQuest messing up, especially in game 1. I think FlyQuest is a lot more conservative when they're starting out in game 1. Whereas G2, so sometimes they're for fun gamers, shall we say? Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be their first official match game, right? Coming in. Yep. PainGaming's obviously is warmed up. Let's say warmed up is probably the best word. Who knows who they're scrimming as well? Like I don't want to know if like Pain is scrimming Gen G. Like I doubt that is like actually happening. They're probably scrimming probably the lower seeded teams here, but kind of taking it away from just CBLOL and PainGaming as a whole, like in this world prior to obviously the Swiss round starting, like who are your and you didn't put out like a tier list. I saw a lot of people putting out tier lists. I put out one myself. Do you actually have like a collected amount of thoughts around some of the teams, like who's coming into this world's very underrated? Obviously, who are your favorites? Like what like overrated teams to kind of like, because like for me, Weibo Gaming and D Plus are the two teams that I think can like legitimately like just win the whole tournament, and I think they're very underrated. Do you similar thoughts? Do you think there's another team that's like on people's radar? I know a lot of people are kind of like, oh, LOL, G2 and Swiss, like they'll choke again, but I feel like this G2 is they're different than last year's, right? They're different.
I don't know about G2 is G2. I would never place any bets on G2. That's like betting on Brazilian League of Legends. Just don't do it. I did not follow the LCK. Sorry, not the LCK, the LPL closely enough, and that's one of the big reasons why I don't.
That's fair.
Usually put out tier lists, because if I don't know all the regions, I don't think I can be fair to them. So I don't know much about Weibo. Though the other one that I've got questions about is actually Top Esports a little bit, because they're the one who qualified in off points from spring, right?
Yeah, and I think they are one of the I don't know. It feels to me that like it's Tian, right? Like Tian at Worlds meme, right? Like okay, but 369 is playing, in my opinion, some of the best League of Legends he's played in a very long time. I think just like as fundamentally as like an individual player, right? Obviously, he did very good with JDG last year and all that stuff. Cream is obviously coming off of like he's like the young mid lane hotshot like Chinese mid laner. Obviously Jackie Love and Mako. I mean that's just like that is like a god bot lane in my opinion. Mako obviously coming off of EDG, playing with them for a very long time, coming into TS. Jackie Love swapping. I don't know if he's officially swapped the narrative, but he's not IG Jack. He's not the Jackie Love that we're used to, right? That you like if this guy like is gonna flash in it. No, he's like much more calculated. He is a lot just fundamentally better as a player. And so matching up Jackie Love and Mako is kind of like a match made in heaven.
Okay.
I think the biggest questions are around Cream and Tian. I think realistically, like how are they going to perform as a 2v2 against some of the best, against the competition that they're expected to play against, right? Like, how do they match up against Canyon Chovy? How do they match up against Tarzan and Xiaohu, right? How are they going to match up against like Faker, Owner? These kind of like, and obviously they're playing Faker and Owner in round one. Like that is the TES is the team that I'm like, you know, maybe they shit out of, they just fucking shit out of Swiss because there's always one Chinese team that's liable to do that. Or they actually play up to what I think it is their potential, which is like a world's level roster, right? World's winning level roster, right? Although utility bots have been a lot more popular, so I don't know if Jackie Love is like gonna get the performances he wants to with like the Jin and the Ashe.
Kai'Sa's in a good position right now.
Kaisa is in a good position. I will say Kaisa is really good, but like if you're a smart team, like I'm not giving Jackie Love. I'm not, like I'm banning that out. Sorry. Like you're gonna be on Jin Ashe duty. I don't give a fuck. Like if you're gonna beat me, you're gonna beat me on the most boring shit fuck champions I've ever seen. That's what's gonna happen. But like like obviously like in regards to your lack of knowledge around the LPL, like are there any teams that you think that like people are very severely underrating? FlyQuest or Team Liquid? Like I feel like a lot of people have this expectation of Team Liquid where they should be pretty good and they should make it out of play-ins because the way they lost against FlyQuest was kind of like a little bit fluky, a little bit like, hey, they lost to a minion. Like what is the idea around like kind of some of the other teams then? LCK, LEC, and LCS.
You know, I feel like I'm just drawing a European hate on this particular interview. I don't hold much hope for you. I'm going to be honest.
Wow.
I think all three of their teams are going to struggle. They might make it out of Swiss, pardon me, but I don't think they'll run far. Yeah, I think. Okay, I was coming to this. I actually was thinking Mad and Fnatic are going to get wiped, but honestly, what I saw from Mad and play-ins looked pretty good. So. I don't know if that's again a difference in quality of the teams they were playing against, but they actually looked better to me than I expected. So I wouldn't even be surprised if Matt actually ends up making a better run than Fnatic. And again, that's because I've not seen Fnatic in this Worlds tournament just yet. I think Team Liquid, I expect them to do better than FlyQuest for the most part. I expect Team Liquid to make it out. They're a solid team. And I think that's what you need in a Swiss format is not just like the high highs. It's not variance. Variance is terrible in Swiss. You want consistent teams. And consistency. It's more consistent. Yeah. No. If anything, Muthi, I think most of the LCA teams can really make strong runs for sure. The one who I'm most worried for is actually our reigning world champions right now.
I think a lot of people just don't know the form of T1, and like their expectation is that with the buffs that came in with the champions and all this stuff, like we're heading into T1 meta, right? Like come on, it's like mages, mid, like that kind of stuff. It's becoming more popular.
I don't know if it's a meta issue though for T1.
I don't think so either. I think this team is just not playing good League of Legends together, unfortunately, and I don't think you
talk about like Owner Faker. I think they're actually the weakest mid jungle duo coming out of Korea, and that's insane when you talk about Faker. Like, I think Faker's seriously, he's not the unkillable Demon King anymore. Like, I think he's still a living legend. He's still really good at macro, but his micro isn't quite there. And Owner is doing some really odd things sometimes. And I'm looking at that going like, I think Owner's going to throw it. I don't think Faker can catch him for a change.
Yeah. I just think like T1 doesn't really play around Owner that well either. Like the way they, at least the way they function. I am worried for our reigning world champions. I think it's always nice to like kind of watch this team at least make it into the top 8 because like viewership, obviously stuff like that, and like who doesn't love a tournament with Faker? But at the same time, like this is probably one of the tournaments where I'm like T1 might just not make it out. Like. They could lose to TES. They could get some really bad like draw luck, and they could just get out. Like I mean, like they could just like they can get very quickly like removed from the top 8 stage.
I was just trying to think if I go as far as to say that drop to one of the pool 4 teams.
That would be insane. So this is the thing. As bad as T1 can look and be, I feel like they're the famous like 15-minute pool 4. You know what I mean? Like they will like beat you in 15 minutes if you're a play-in team. Like that's what they do.
Was it Latam or Turkey? They just bodied them.
Yeah, their floor is very like solid. But I think T1's ceiling is very interesting. I mean obviously LNG is back with Scout. I think that's like a big boon. Like I think LNG Scout is that team becomes with Yigal, like, oh, do they make it out? To like, oh, they should.
Like
make
with
top eight.
Scout, they are China's 3rd seed. Without Scout, they might not even be top 4.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna put you on the spot here. 2 teams that you expect to make it to the finals out of everyone that's here.
2 finals.
Grand final.
Ooh. Crap. Okay. Again, my answer is going to be kind of because I don't know the LPL that well. So okay, I think Bilibili is really good, but I am going to call for a Korean Grand Finals without T1 for a change.
Okay.
My head canon is T1's going to take out a whole bunch of Chinese on the way up there, and then
again, and then they're gonna run into Gen G. They're gonna run into Gen G, and it's like, all right, yeah, Gen G's just gonna beat them.
You know what? That's I'm gonna go for Hanwha and D+.
That's so funny. Finals. That's hilarious. I'll do you one better. I did my Worlds pick'ems, whatever, right? The team I have winning Worlds is Hanwha Life, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I had like legitimately see a world where Hanwha Life could like, because like I don't know, I just feel like
I know Peanut, it's so weird.
I feel like Peanut is playing like some of the best League of Legends I've seen this guy play like in a very long time.
And Zeka's doing well too right now, so it's kind of like
Zeka is not just the Silence Akali guy. Like Zeka is a different Zeka, man. Like and then Viper Delight just looks really good. Like you're not gonna get
that's crazy. Like Hanwha is the 1st seed coming out of Korea, and here 2 of us are going like, that's the one that we thought was crazy. That we're
I mean they're coming out. They're coming out of the 1st seed, but like
I yet all of us kind of question them a bit.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people fundamentally and rightfully so believe Gen G is like the number 1 or number 2 best team. Losing one best of 5 doesn't really change that. Granted, it was in the grand finals, but like you're not gonna give Viper Kaisa. So that's like an instant ban unless you really think you can handle it. Peanut, like I said, is coming into a really good jungle meta right now. Like Poppy's back. Like the moment Jarvan comes back into the meta, Xin Zhao comes back into the meta. Oh, Peanut is like, yeah, give me Poppy. I'll every day. I'll tear these guys up. Like that's the thing. Sejuani's coming back. Maokai, these more like I'll say cerebral style junglers. I mean, Peanut just kind of wins out in that. My only case for like why Hanwha Life wouldn't win is because like Doran, right? Like Doran is the guy that like, which Doran shows up? Is it the choker Doran or is it Doran that like can dumpster Zeus and dumpster all these stuff? Like that's the big issue with me.
That's the point, yeah.
And like Zeka has just been looking really good right now, and I want to see how he looks on these mages. I want to see like if he has his own counter picks prepared. Silas can be picked into some of these champions. Akali has been shown can be picked. Yeah, obviously the Yone, but like Zeka also plays other champions. Like he plays mages. He's doing good. He's evolved as a player. So yeah, I don't know. It's really weird. Like I feel like saying HLE will win Worlds is a controversial opinion, despite how good they've looked. But yeah, this is probably the most competitive Worlds we've had up to date. And I think I talked about it too. This Worlds from top to bottom has the most stacked mid jungle 2v2 that we've ever seen.
Agreed.
Like fundamentally, like the amount of in like elite junglers and elite mid laners at this tournament is bar none. Somewhat like I don't think we could have gotten better mid jungles, right? Like from any of the other regions. If I think about it, right? Like FearX doesn't have any like crazy mid jungle duo, right? Like maybe you could have argued like BDD Pioshik, but I don't know about KT. Like
no man, I'm sorry, man. Pioshik is just not it for me.
Yeah, and like obviously LPL, like you could have like maybe had some individuals, but I think the mid jungle talent coming out of this, I think the only one we're missing out on is Cloud9 with Jojo Blabber. Like that would have been the only substitute I would have made. But like having El Yoya coming in, obviously Razor Humanoid, Yike, and Caps, like every region has probably put forth their best mid jungle talent, and like this is going to be so fun this tournament.
It's fun, Shibby. Sinan will make it for MSI. Jojo's just kind of late for the Worlds,
Jojo's late for everything. Okay, perfect. Well, that's it. We've crested an hour. I told you, hey, block an hour out. We spent some time catching up. Do you have any final things? Anything crazy that you want to predict? Dark horse teams or anything like that?
Yeah, you know what? Dark horse narrative. Because I said T1 might struggle, even though I predicted an all Korean finals. The alternative is we're going to get an LPL versus LKA grand finals, and China will finally win the Worlds after I can't remember the last time they won it because it's been Korea the entire way because T1's not there anymore. So like the final boss is gone.
Okay, fair enough.
Any
last cope for the Pain Gaming fans? Anything else that you want to like talk about?
Is what there a world? We made it! We made it! Go Pain! We already won. That's it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Fair enough. Pain Gaming is already
also won. America's next year is going to be hella spicy with the performance from LA and Brazil this year.
That's true. That's true. I'm actually genuinely excited for next year in regards to the mixing of teams and everything like that.
All you people who said that so unfair Brazil stole a seed.
All the people that said,
looky here.
Yeah, all the people that said challengers, they won't take more than a couple games. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. No seed was stolen. It was rightfully earned by CBLOL in the ensuing Americas or America's South. Well, RMC, I really appreciate it. I always love talking to you about League of Legends, about CBLOL.
Yeah,
Where can we find you? I have your Twitter it's at RandomMCaster. Are you going to be reviewing any of the games coming into Worlds? Are you going to be doing like a VOD review session? I know you and Trajan, so the Gringos, Liberados guys, who are doing some stuff, live reaction, stuff like that. Will there be similar content coming out or similar things? Are you guys planning anything because Pain Gaming made it into the Swiss stage?
Gonna be honest, no clue right now. A lot of those like live react things or the live streams that we're doing, it's spontaneous. Like we just show up and do it. Yeah, it's not planned out. We're just all watching. Like, hey, you're watching, I'm watching. Let's just stream it. Right now, the future of CBLOL English is all in flux because we don't know what's happening with the whole South America's thing. So because of that, like, we don't really have any content planned out. So where you can find me, you can find me on Twitter. I'll probably be streaming some non-league stuff in the off season, maybe play some games or something. I'll probably put something on Twitter asking what you'll want me to play. It's coming up sometime soon. Maybe, we'll see. Beyond that, yeah, you can find me all around the collegiate scene. If you follow my Twitter, I'll post when I'm going to be casting stuff. But right now, don't know what's going to happen. Don't know if we're going to go stream. I will definitely be watching the games. So, you know what? Come join the community Discord and we'll either watch party in there or we'll post where people are watch partying if we're in other streams or whatnot.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching the video. I'm hoping you guys enjoyed the content. If you did, leave a like, comment, do all that jazz. I genuinely try to respond to every single comment I see because it's always interesting to see the other opinions of people that care about League of Legends esports as much as I do. Obviously, the best way to support me is to hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications on my latest uploads. If you want to see more of me and my content, I stream on Twitch 5 days a week. The link will be in the description box below. If you are into short form content, I'm also on TikTok. We talk about LPL, LCK, LEC, all the stuff over there. We talk about roster moves. So if your jam is short form content, head over to TikTok, hit the follow button there. I'm also on Twitter. So all of that stuff will be in the description box below. But other than that, thanks for watching the video and I hope to see you soon.